プロトカルチャー。
プロトカルチャー。
アルケス・ナ・カールチュン・マイクダンツ・プロトカルチャー。
カールチュン。
カールチュン・デアルマガドラ・デタルニ・ザンチュ・ゲスボドルザ・デースケス。
Two years after Super Dimension Fortress Macross saw the light, Shoji Kawamori, Kazutaka Miyatake and Haruhiko Mikimoto got together again to work on new mecha and character designs for a compilation movie of the series. Mobile Suit Gundam had a lot of success with the compilation trilogy, so now it was turn for Macross to receive the same treatment. Yet, the team decided to do something entirely different for the film. Instead of being a summary of the events using the same footage from the series, they went ahead and redesigned everything. And by everything, I mean everything. The story is different, yet the themes stay the same, the uniforms are different, the Zentradi are different, they even have an alien language now, the Macross itself is different, even Minmei's outfit is different. Do you remember Love acts like a more dramatic reinterpretation of the events of the first part of the series instead of a direct summary. Kawamori himself explains it like this: the real Macross is out there, somewhere. If I tell the story in the length of a TV series, it looks one way, and if I tell it as a movie-length story, it's organized another way. And some people may not like it because, well, it introduces canonical disparities to the whole saga. But I think that this is a great way to expand, shorten or even change certain elements that were left dangling for too much or too little in the series. The fact that almost the whole plot is condensed into a 2-hour film makes everything feel super important. No more filler subplots, just actions and consequences that directly tie in to the first space war between the Zentradi, the Microns and the Meltrandi. But I'll talk about them later. I really liked the movie. In fact, just when the global license for Macross was being released, I didn't know if I wanted to get into the whole Macross saga. As a child, I saw Robotech and I liked it, and I knew that it was a mashup between 3 series. But I didn't do my research nor anything, so my overall Macross knowledge was very poor. Then Macross started to get some attention thanks in part to the deal between Harmony Gold and Big West, and also the new Macross Delta movie that was announced. So I thought to myself, okay, instead of trying to get into the whole hassle of the series, I'll check out the movie. And if I like it, then I will try to get into the whole Macross saga. I purposely left out Robotech for reasons that I already explained in my previous Macross video. So I saw the movie, and wow, I truly got blown away. I did remember some parts of Robotech, meaning I remember some parts of Macross, but Do You Remember Love is an entirely different beast and probably the quintessential Macross adventure to this date. A 2-hour distillation of the very themes and storytelling elements that would inform the entire Macross saga from here onward. From the alternate future of Macross II all the way to the new Macross Delta story. Almost everything originated here, Super Dimensional Fortress Macross, Do You Remember Love? But it becomes much more evident once you see the original series first and then the movies. So my friends, I'm Absa, and let's take a journey and explore why Do You Remember Love is a great, if not the best, Macross experience to this date. A story that took all the tropes from the original series and refined them to absolute perfection. Such was its fame and impact that it even exists within the Macross universe as a dramatic reinterpretation and documentary of the first space war. And like my original exploration of Super Dimension Fortress Macross, I'll separate this video in 3 parts. The first 2 regarding the changes in the mechanical design and adaptation of the story, and in the 3rd part I'll talk about the pseudo sequel, the mini movie called Flashback 2012. As I said before, even though the film is an absolute masterpiece that doesn't need any prior knowledge of the franchise, it definitely makes a bigger impact if seen after the series. This way, you can more or less pinpoint where certain plot elements got compressed or expanded. And while the story remained technically the same, covering all of the war but not the aftermath, I will go ahead and say that story-wise, what really changed was how things happened, not what happens or how it ends. Except maybe for the Ichijo Misa Earth Stranded period, that was a very notable change, but if I may add, it was for the best. What I found fascinating about this retelling is how it balanced the plot revolving precisely around the Ichijo, Minmei, Misa love triangle against the backdrop of the galactic battle. In the original series, the love part sometimes drag on for too much or there is little to no combat. And well, I kinda get where they come from. The creators have to do a little bit of world building and establish the human dynamics, but man, sometimes it gets a little bit too boring. To correct that, the film starts right at the middle of the Micron Centrari War, with the Macross already journeying through space to return to Earth. And well, remember the Meltrandi? Well, the film retcons the female Centrari as the Meltrandi, a separate civilization of super warriors just like the male Centrari, just them being female. The story also retcons that the Centrari and the Meltrandi have been warring factions for millennia. In fact, a very important part of the story revolves around the willingness of the Centrari to work with the Microns, not because of their connection to the protoculture, but because they wanted to use said connection for their advantage, by using the songs of Minmei to shock and destroy the bitter rivals, the Meltrandi. That being said, the Macross itself is now a Meltrandi gun destroyer that crashed on Earth and was reconstructed. Thus, this is the reason why the Centrari went all out and attacked Earth as soon as they discovered the enemy ship. Because yes, just like in the series, the Earth is now in ruins. So as we can see, there is a little bit more nuance to why the aliens decided to invade and attack Earth instead of just the super weird and haphazard booby trap shot of the SDF-1 in the first couple of episodes. In Do You Remember Love, there's a true separation between the Centrari genders that is locked in a millennia-old battle, not just them being in different fleets. This separation plays a very important part in the story, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Speaking of the changes of the Centrari, they now look much more alien than their previous incarnation, where they were just giant humans with weird skin tones. Here, they look a lot more gruesome and inhuman. As a matter of fact, Kazutaka Miyatake based much of the settings and color schemes of the Centrari on deep-sea biological creatures, but curious thing is that he went diametrically opposite for the Meltrandi by choosing an inorganic artificial engineer-like feel for them. Archivist Exodal was one of the Centrari that had the biggest difference, as he now has a very big and deformed head to represent his absolute knowledge of the Centrari history. Brichai also looks different, but his iconic eye patch or monocle accessory is still present. Supreme Commander Bodolza also had a big change in look and background story. Here, he has had experience with culture before. He knows the story of the protoculture and what songs are. He's actually afraid of them, thus telling his fellow Centrari that they are very powerful weapons. But since the Microns do know about culture, they could forge an alliance to finally be able to destroy the Meltrandi. He also looks very different, like a Centrari cyborg fused to the mothership or something like that. All in all, the Centrari now look very brutal and menacing. On the other hand, another curious thing regarding the Meltrandi is that Miria is still a super beautiful ace pilot, but Laplamis got the short straw, as not only did she have like 2 lines of dialogue, but also got transformed into a kind of Meltran machine ship fusion that was aptly called the Meltrandi Laplamis class mobile fortress. And obviously, she looks completely different from the original series. The Macross military also received a minor design upgrade that's most noticeable on the uniforms of the pilots. The suits now glow in the dark and have bigger shoulder pads. And well, I may not be a fashion designer or anything, but they do look cooler. And I say this as a fan of the original uniforms. On the mecha side of things, what really changed was the Valkyries that the protagonist piloted. Ichigo now has a BF-1S that is painted with his red color scheme, and Max also has one with his blue color scheme. Speaking of the character designs themselves, they are almost the same, just much more polished and sharper. Their faces are much more dramatic and their eyes are very expressive. I really don't know how to explain it any other way than by saying that they look much more beautiful than how they looked in the series. Even my partner, who is not at all into the mecha genre, said that the characters look very pretty, almost shoujo-like, whatever that means. Back to the story, the main plot elements are still there, just compressed. Min-Mei is still the idol that stopped the war, but in Do You Remember Love, she is already big. We don't see her rise to the top. Ichigo is already a member of the Skull Squadron, and in a Centrari attack, he rescues her and both get stuck inside an inaccessible Macross compartment. That's how they meet, more or less the same as the series. But what I found great about this retelling is that there is not a lot of emphasis placed on the Ichigo-Min-Mei relationship. Because, well, in the series that relationship dragged a lot, and Lin Min-Mei had a very bad attitude towards Hikaru. He actually kind of friend-zoned him for most of the series. Here in Do You Remember Love, things move faster, and while they in fact have feelings for each other, with Hikaru going all the way and borrow a Valkyrie just to show her the rings of Saturn, the development of their relationship gets stopped right away because they got captured along with Roy, Misa and Kaifun. And here's where things get super interesting. The whole reveal of the proto-culture and the Macross heritage and the power of the songs is delivered here, along with Kaifun's and Min-Mei kiss, because of course. Here we also first meet Miria, the Meltrandi ace pilot who obliterates a lot of Centrari soldiers, and along with the heroic sacrifice of Roy, that gives an opportunity for Misa and Ichigo to escape while the Centrari fleet is folding. And something very fascinating happens. For their escape, Misa and Ichigo kiss, but as soon as the Centrari go into shock, Misa slaps Hikaru. Then they try to get away but get caught in the folding process, so they end up in a weird desolate place. Now, not only are they devastated by their losses, but soon find out that they are in a totally annihilated Earth, so their moods plummet. I like this deviation from the original story as it gives much more meaning and weight to the Misa-Ichigo relationship. Imagine being stranded alone for days and days without knowing when the Macross would arrive and seeing that there were no other survivors left on Earth. So what started with a kiss followed by a slap genuinely develops to be a strong relationship between two jaded soldiers. This gets solidified even more when they find the proto-culture ruins and have a very heartwarming imaginary meal. What follows next is the discovery of an ancient pop culture song called, obviously, Do You Remember Love, and the declaration of peace between the Centrari and the Macross. But truth was that Commander Bodolza only wanted to use the power of the proto-culture song for his benefit and obviously to destroy the Meltrandi. And bad thing was that when the cryptographers from the Macross weren't able to decipher the song in time, surprise surprise, Bodolza ordered to destroy everything. But in a very surprising move, Britai and Exodol decided to defend the Macross in order to preserve culture. Meanwhile, Miria finds her match with ace pilot Max Genius and they start fighting and then they get in love and then... Okay, I'll stop summarizing the story and go ahead and say that the ending of Do You Remember Love is amazing. One of the most drop-dead gorgeous and action-packed sequences in all of the mecha genre. The Centrari defending the Macross, Min-Mei struggled to find courage to sing a song deciphered by rival Misa, Ichigo infiltrating the Bodolza fleet, Max and Miria dominating the battlefield. Wow, it's brutal and amazing and beautiful. And yes, I'm a total fanboy of Do You Remember Love and I'm not ashamed to admit it. The way the plot got reorganized and how they start to reveal the story elements makes the delivery feel much more satisfying. I really hope that just as they re-released Macross Plus in theaters, the powers that be do the same thing with Do You Remember Love. It's, at least for me, the definitive Macross experience to this date. And you know what? They can now add the little sequel epilogue Angel's Paints from Flashback 2012 for it to be the complete experience. And speaking of which, let's quickly talk a little bit about the whole Flashback 2012. Well, not the whole, just the important parts. Super Dimension Fortress Macross Flashback 2012 is an OVA created by Studio New that was released in 1987 to commemorate the 5th anniversary of the Macross franchise. The thing is that, in a sense, it's not a true OVA. It's approximately 30 minutes long and made up of 10 music videos, many of them composed from scenes from the Macross television series and from the movie. And the songs are also reused from the series, more or less. The most notable exception is the Angel's Paint sequences that not only include a new song but also expand on the ending of Do You Remember Love. Shoji Kawamori wanted to include an epilogue in Do You Remember Love but was unable due to studio constraints, so a little bit later, in Flashback 2012, he got the chance to make it. I'm not going to talk about the whole flashback, just the new scenes that compose the epilogue, as the other thing is just a compilation summary. The first part of Angel's Paints is what was supposed to be shown as the epilogue of the movie. In 2012, a couple of years after the first Space War, Lin Minmei held her farewell concert in front of the SDF-1 Macross, attended by Sanctuary and human fans alike. It's a nice ending that mirrors what happens in the series after the peace treaty is signed and Minmei continues to tour the Earth with her manager. The second part of Angel's Paints is also composed of entirely new footage and also being told from Minmei's perspective. She sits among the thousands of seats in the empty stadium where her last concert was held. She walks up the stairs and as she starts to play the music, she sees Hikaru in a pilot suit. He hands her a microphone and immediately she is greeted by Misa. The love triangle is now resolved and each one is following their respective dream.
The ones who create culture together with the ones who protect it.
We have a flashback where Minmei remembers how she started by moving towards the Macross and even remembers a place where a poster stood promoting the SDF-1. But now, in 2012, a couple of years later, the poster has been replaced with one promoting the SDF-2 Mega Road 1. The Mega Road is a huge ship containing a portion of the new humanity that, in order to preserve human culture, is going to space again to find new planets to colonize. This is the main purpose of the Humanity Seeding Project, an initiative created by the new United Nations government to ensure the survival of humanity. We saw bits of this initiative in the final episodes of the original series, where Commander Global is talking to Misa about the fact that in order to preserve human culture, humans must explore the galaxy since they already saw that there are more advanced civilizations that are capable of destroying the Earth and wiping out all of humanity's culture. The name of this ship, the Mega Road, is also a nod to the original intended name of the series, Battle City Mega Road, or Mega Load, however you want to pronounce it. Back to the story, Misa has been promoted to captain and is given command of the SDF-2, while her husband Hikaru, still the Skull Squadron leader who is in charge of protection of the vessel, is now piloting the newest Valkyrie, the BF-4 Lightning III. Minmei then waves goodbye to the crowd as the SDF-2 launches and rises above the landscape of Macross City and onward into space. This would be the last time that we see or know anything about Misa, Ichijo and Minmei, as the whereabouts of the SDF-2 are currently unknown, and in 2016 all of their transmissions abruptly ceased. Although in Macross Delta we hear of certain rumors of a character called Lady M that is funding research of sound energy and power. Could it be Minmei or is it Misa That is a question that has not been answered yet, and sadly, in 1996, Ichigo's voice actor Arihiro Hase was found dead. So actually, who knows if Kawamori will ever tell us what happened to the Macross I. All in all, Flashback 2012 is a nice little piece of memorabilia and a very welcome epilogue for the saga of the first Macross. It may not be as bombastic as Do You Remember Love, but it works best like that. It's actually a reminder of the whole saga along with the best songs of Minmay, a finishing capstone to the chronicle of the first space war, and consequently a way to open new story threads where humans are now exploring this vast galaxy of ours, with new threats, new characters, and more importantly, new songs and new culture. For all Macross fans, and I dare even say that for all mecha fans, Do You Remember Love is definitely a must-see movie and a worthwhile experience. It's a great distillation of the franchise's core elements and storytelling tropes, and aside Macross 7, more or less, future Macross shows probably got the respective movie retell thanks to Do You Remember's Love impact. I really liked the movie and hopefully will be able to watch it in movie theaters soon. My favorite part was the battle between Max and Miruya, and obviously the ending, but please leave in the comment what was your favorite part. And as you may or may not know, my name is Absa, and we can continue the conversation over at Twitter, where you can follow me at Absalonikas, and on Instagram, where I post pictures of my figures, my cats, and sometimes even myself. I'll be trying to talk more about anime, comics maybe even figures and model kits, but as you may know, till next time, always remember that in fiction lies power. So let's use it to forge a new type of story, our hero's journey.